So good morning everyone. Hope everyone is comfortable. So today our topic is extracellular matrix ECM and the second part is protein targeting. In this we are going to see the components of extracellular matrix, functions of extracellular matrix and extracellular matrix in health and disease, that is the diseases associated with the ECM, protein targeting, the second part of the class, and the disorders associated with the protein targeting. So first, extracellular matrix. So it is three-dimensional network of extracellular molecules that provide structural and biochemical support to surrounding cells. So we know the human body is made up of different organs, and the organs are made up of tissues, and tissues are made up of cells. So there is some space in between the cells that is known as extracellular matrix. And this extracellular matrix contains macromolecules that provide structural support and biochemical support to the surrounding cells. So that is extracellular matrix. Network of interstitial proteins that contribute a significant portion of any tissue. That means these macromolecules that are present in the extracellular matrix are mostly proteins. They contain protein as their component, and they are significant portion in any tissue. So in this picture you can see the extracellular matrix, and this is the plasma membrane that surrounds the cell. We know in animals or animal cells there is no cell wall, there is only cell membrane. So this is plasma membrane, which contains bilipid layer, that is two layers of phospholipids. So this is inside the cell and this is outside the cell, which is extracellular matrix. So in this extracellular matrix you can see different macromolecules here. So we are going to see all the components of the extracellular matrix. So what are the components of extracellular matrix? There are three important components in the extracellular matrix. So the first one is proteoglycans. It is a complex of proteins and polysaccharides. That means it contains a core protein and glycosaminoglycans. So what are glycosaminoglycans? We know that they are nothing but heteropolysaccharides or mucopolysaccharides. So proteoglycans are the important component of extracellular matrix, which are made up of a core protein and glycosaminoglycans. So the main function of proteoglycans is they act as cushion to the cells. So during the cell movement, there may be mechanical injury to the cell. So this is prevented by proteoglycans by acting as cushion to the cells. And what is the difference between proteoglycans and glycoproteins? So proteoglycans, there is the carbohydrate, both proteoglycans and glycoproteins contain protein and carbohydrate as their components. But in proteoglycans, there is more carbohydrate content, whereas in glycoproteins, there is more protein content. So in extracellular matrix, the proteoglycans are made up of less core protein and more amount of glycosaminoglycans, that is more carbohydrates. So this is the important component of ECM. And the other component is structural proteins like collagen and elastin. So these provide strength to the cells. So the first one is proteoglycans and the second one is structural proteins, the collagen and elastin. So for these proteoglycans and structural protein to give strength to the cell, they have to be attached to the cell. So how they are attached to the cell? So that is the third component of ECM, that is adhesion molecules. The adhesion molecules, that is fibronectin, laminin and integrin. So these molecules bind the two components, that is proteoglycans and structural proteins, that is collagen and elastin, to the cell. That means the receptors of the cell. So these are the three components of extracellular matrix. The first two being the functions are cushion and providing strength, and the adhesive molecules will connect the first two components to the cell surface through receptors. So coming to the individual components, we will see about the individual components. The first one is proteoglycans. We know proteoglycans is a complex formed from core protein and glycosaminoglycans. So in this picture, you can see this is the core protein, and the core protein is binded to the glycosaminoglycans. And we know what are glycosaminoglycans. So we know glycosaminoglycans, all the chondroitin sulfate, keratin sulfate, hyaluronic acid, all these are glycosaminoglycans are mucopolysaccharides. Okay, so these are attached to the core protein which form proteoglycans. So coming to proteoglycans, so these are nothing but compound containing proteins which are covalently bounded to the glycosaminoglycans. And glycosaminoglycans, we know they are also known as heteropolysaccharides, mucopolysaccharides, and GAG. And coming to the second component, the structural proteins, which include collagen and elastin. So coming to collagen, collagen contains 3 polypeptide chains. So the 3 polypeptide chains coil to form the collagen molecule. We know polypeptide chain are made up of amino acids. There are 3 polypeptide chains which are coiled to form collagen molecule, which finally forms collagen fiber. And coming to collagen synthesis, we know pre-pro-collagen is formed in the endoplasmic reticulum, and that is by hydroxylation. The proline and lysine are attached, and after that they are released to the cytoplasm, where the individual polypeptides are coiled to form a triple helix formation, and this is released and it finally forms the collagen cross linkages. This is collagen synthesis that we had already seen in the previous classes. And coming to the collagen, it is the main structural protein in the extracellular matrix in various connective tissues in the body. And it is composed of 3 polypeptide chains coiled around each other to form triple helix structure. So we had seen in the previous slide the triple helix structure. And if you remember the protein structure, we had studied the primary and secondary structure. In secondary structure, we had seen alpha helix and beta pleated. And apart from that alpha helix and beta pleated, we had seen the supercoils and triple helix configuration. So that triple helix configuration is seen in the collagen. And collagen is a protein made from amino acids which specifically include glycine, proline, and lysine. Glycine is present at the 3rd position, and proline and lysine, they forms the hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine during the formation of collagen. And there are different types of collagen depending upon the distribution. And coming to elastin, so elastin fibers is also the second component in the structural proteins. We are seeing the components of the extracellular matrix. In that, in the structural proteins, we had seen the collagen, and now we are seeing the elastin. So elastin, here you can see in the relaxed form, the elastin will be having the cross linkages and also the hydrophobic domains. You know what is hydrophobic domains? The bonds which are formed due to hydrophobic bonds due to hydrophobic part of the molecule. So these are hydrophobic domains. So both the hydrophobic domains and cross linkages are present in the relaxed form in the elastin fibers. So when the elastin fibers are stretched, then these hydrophobic domains are lost, and these are linked by the cross linkages. So in this way, the elastin fiber can be stretched and relaxed. The main property of elastin is it is having very stretchable, very elastic nature. So that is the importance of elastin fibers. And elastin, it is a key protein of extracellular matrix, and it is responsible for elasticity and extensibility of many tissues in the body. So the tissue in the body which contains more elastin, they will be having more elasticity and extensibility. The tissue which contains more elastin fibers. And this elastin is synthesized as tropoelastin, which undergoes post-translational modifications to form the complete elastin fibers. And these elastins are more commonly present in the areas where stretchability is necessary. They are found in lungs, large blood vessel walls, and elastic ligaments, where the elasticity is necessary for performing different functions in the body. And in this picture, you can see the elastin and collagen present in the extracellular matrix. And in between, you can see the cells also. Clear? And the third component, adhesion molecules, which includes fibronectin, laminin, and integrin. The main function of the adhesion molecules is connecting the cell surface to the important components of the ECM, that is proteoglycans and structural proteins, collagen and elastin. So these are connected by the fibronectin, laminin, and integrin. Then only they can give support to the cell. So in this picture here, you can see this is the fibronectin and this is the laminin, which are attached to the integrin. So integrin is the adhesive molecule which is partly embedded in the plasma membrane. So due to this attachment of integrin with the fibronectin and laminin, these can connect the membrane to the important components of the ECM. So fibronectin is high molecular weight glycoprotein of extracellular matrix, and they bind to cell membranes and ECM, the glycoproteins and collagen, by integrin receptors. And they actively participate in cell adhesion and migration. And tumor cells lack fibronectin, which leads to metastasis. Tumor cells, that is cancer cells, they lack fibronectin. So when they lack fibronectin, what happens is they cannot be connected to the extracellular matrix and remain stable in the extracellular matrix. So they will be moving outside, which leads to metastasis. That means the cancer is transferred to the other tissues also due to lack of fibronectin. And coming to laminin, laminins form independent networks and are associated with collagen networks. And they bind to cell membranes and ECM proteoglycans and collagen by integrin receptors. That is, this is the same function for collagen, for fibronectin and laminin. That is, they bind the cell membranes to the ECM components, proteoglycans and collagen. This occurs by integrin receptors. We had seen in the picture. So they are actively involved in neuronal growth and nerve regeneration. That is the important function of laminin. And coming to the integrin, the adhesive molecule, it is involved in cell-cell and cell extracellular matrix binding because it is partly embedded in the plasma membrane. And we know it binds to fibronectin and laminin, which helps them to to bind the other two components, that is proteoglycans and structural proteins. So here in this picture, you can completely see the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane, and this is inside the cell, and this is outside the cell, that is extracellular matrix. And in this, you can see all the macromolecules, that is the components of the extracellular matrix. The important component is proteoglycans. Here you can see the proteoglycans is nothing but it is a complex of core protein and glycosaminoglycans. And you can see the collagen. This collagen and elastin, they work combinedly. So here you can see the collagen fibers, and these proteoglycans and collagen form the major components of the extracellular matrix. And apart from this, you can see the adhesive molecules, the fibronectin and laminin, and also integrin. So integrin is partly integrated in the plasma membrane, and this is attached to the fibronectin and the lamin. And this fibronectin and lamin will connect the plasma membrane in the extracellular matrix, the components of the extracellular matrix. So this is about the extracellular matrix and components of the extracellular matrix. So we had seen the components of extracellular matrix, the three important components: proteoglycans, the structural proteins collagen and elastin, and adhesive molecules fibronectin, laminin, and integrin. So coming to the functions of extracellular matrix. So first we will see the functions of individual components. So the main function of extracellular matrix in animal cells is, in plant cells, it contains the cell wall. The cell wall is very rigid apart from the cell membrane. Whereas in animal cells or human cells, there is no cell wall. There is only cell membrane. So the extracellular matrix have to take the role of the cell wall. So that is the main function. The giving support to the cell is the main function of the extracellular matrix, because animal cells lack cell wall. So proteoglycans, coming to the individual components, we are seeing the functions of the individual components. So the major component of extracellular matrix is proteoglycans. So that's why it is also known as filler substance. Most of the extracellular matrix is filled by the proteoglycans, which is made up of protein and glycosaminoglycan. So combination of proteoglycans and collagen form cartilage. So we know the bone is formed by collagen, mostly by collagen, whereas cartilage is formed by combination of proteoglycans and collagen. So these proteoglycans regulate the movement of molecules through the matrix. So the movement of molecules within the matrix is necessary for different biochemical processes. So this movement is regulated by proteoglycans, which is present in large amount in the extracellular matrix. And this proteoglycans serves as lubricant by creating hydrating gel that helps to withstand the high pressure or the pressure changes in the extracellular matrix. Coming to the collagen, it provides tensile strength by resisting the stretching of the cell. So collagen is a very hard protein, so it will provide strength to the cells. So it maintains structural integrity, and it prevents tear of ligaments by transmitting mechanical forces. So you know the tear of ligaments. There are ligaments which will, during the movements of the joints and muscles, these ligaments will also move and there will be pressure on the ligaments. So due to this pressure, there may be tear in the ligaments. So this tear in the ligaments is avoided by this collagen. So that's it, prevents ligamental tears. This happens by transmitting the mechanical forces. And this collagen plays important role in tissue and organ development, because extracellular matrix is also necessary for formation, for development of tissue and organs apart from the cells. So that is a function of collagen. And we know different types of collagen are there depending upon their distribution, and there is a slight variation in the functions of different types of collagen. And coming to elastin, this enables skin to stretch because of this elastic property, and this maintains elasticity and extensibility. So that is the main function of elastin. This elastin works along with the collagen. Wrinkle formation. So we know there are no wrinkles in the young age, and as the age progresses, there will be formation of wrinkles and loss of skin tone. So why this occurs is, this is due to the loss of collagen and elastin. As the age progresses, there will be loss of elastin and collagen, which leads to wrinkle formation and loss of skin tone. And coming to the functions of adhesive molecules, fibronectin, it maintains cell shape The intracellular cytoskeleton align with extracellular fibronectin to maintain the cell shape. And it promotes wound healing by guiding immune cells. So you know the wound healing, whether it is acute or chronic wound healing, the immune cells are needed. So that the immune cells come to the site and they take the action, and this is guided by the fibronectin. And they help in blood clotting by linking to fibrin. So in the process of blood clotting, they help in the clotting by linking to the fibrin. And this fibronectin help in cell adhesion, cell migration, and differentiation. And in embryogenesis, they help in cell movement. So they are the functions of fibronectin. And coming to laminin, these laminin connect the underlying ECM components, just like fibronectin, and structural support for the tissues, and they act as permeability barrier to cell and the molecules because they connect the plasma membrane in the extracellular matrix. And they also help in the germ cell migration during the embryogenesis. So the germ cell migration, you know, during the process of embryogenesis, there is migration of the cells for the formation of different tissues and organs. So this is this migration is occurs with the help of laminin. Laminin also fibronectin. And coming to the integrin, we know adhesion and transmigration of leukocytes across the endothelium at the sites of inflammation is done by integrin, and they play important role in the platelet aggregation, and they influence proliferation, apoptosis, and differentiation of cells by signaling cascade. Okay, because these are partly embedded in the plasma membrane, they help in the following functions, that is platelet aggregation, proliferation, apoptosis, and cell differentiation. So apoptosis, you know, it is a programmed cell death in which during an injury there is a programmed cell death which is known as apoptosis. So these are the individual functions of the components of the extracellular matrix. And coming to the overall functions of the extracellular matrix, it provides support. We know how it provides support because of proteoglycans and collagen, which is a hard protein, and it segregates tissues from one another. We know tissues are made up of different types of cells. So in an organ, there are different tissues. So these tissues are made up of different types of cells. So these tissues are separated or segregated by the extracellular matrix, and they regulate intercellular communication because in between cells the extracellular matrix is present, so they regulate the intercellular communication. And the cellular growth factors which are present outside the cell, they are stored in the extracellular matrix, and this extracellular matrix helps in the process like growth, wound healing, and fibrosis. And apart from that, the extracellular matrix work with the stem cells for the growth and regrowth of all the parts of the human body. So when there is any damage to any part of the human body, again it is growing and regrowing because of stem cells. So this extracellular matrix will work with the stem cells for this growth and regrowth. And in fetuses also, there may be damage to the fetus in the womb, and again that parts are being regrown by the help of this extracellular matrix apart from the cells, and facilitate the surrounding cells to repair the tissue instead of forming the scar tissue. So they help in the repair of the tissue, the extracellular matrix. So the stiffness and elasticity of the extracellular matrix is important in cell migration and gene expression. Okay, so the stiffness and elasticity, which are due to collagen and elastin, are very much important for the cell migration and gene expression. We know what is cell migration during embryogenesis. The cell migration is necessary for the formation of different tissues and organs. And what is gene expression? We know the gene expression, it is nothing but from the formation of mRNA to the, from DNA to the formation of the final protein, it is known as gene expression. So for this gene expression also, this ECM is necessary. And apart from that, the cell adhesion molecules modulates signal transduction pathways by interacting with receptor tyrosine kinases. So what is the signal transduction pathways? We know certain signals are coming from outside the cell for certain process to occur inside the cell. This is known as signal transduction pathways. So in this, what happens is certain signals will come from outside the cell by in the form of hormones or in the form of other stimulus. So these signals are enter the cells, and these signals are given to the cells, which is known as signal transduction. So in the signal transduction, these signals will create the second messengers, or these signals will create some change inside the cell, due to which the cell will give the response and will give the final product. So this is known as signal transduction. The signals will come from outside the cell, and these signals are transducted into the cell to perform certain action, and by this action certain products are formed inside the cell which fulfill the action. Okay, so this is also done with the help of extracellular matrix, signal transduction pathways that you will be seeing in the hormones. And we had seen the components and functions of the extracellular matrix, and now we are seeing the health and disease, the relation of extracellular matrix in health and disease. So these extracellular matrix is associated with the physiological process and also in the pathological or disease process. So the physiological process are morphogenesis, that is shape of the cell, angiogenesis, that is in the formation of the blood vessel, and tissue repair. If there is any injury, there is tissue repair. So all these are physiological process which occurs with the help of extracellular matrix, that is components of the extracellular matrix. And in tissue remodeling also, the degradation of certain part of extracellular matrix is necessary. So tissue remodeling is also occurs by the extracellular matrix. And this extracellular matrix also occurs with pathological process. So in some diseases, there is cirrhosis, and there is arthritis, and there is metastasis. So these processes will also occur by extracellular matrix also. These are diseasal conditions. These are the processes which occur in the diseasal conditions which are not good for the health. But these also occur with the help of extracellular matrix. So apart from that, the bacteria and virus will also use the extracellular matrix for entering into the body. So this is, for example, the bacteria like Clostridium, they secrete collagenase, an enzyme. So this enzyme will destroy the collagen matrix so that the bacteria can easily enter the body. So bacterial invasion. Similarly, some viruses, they attach to the heparin sulfate. The heparin sulfate, which is a component, which is a glycosaminoglycan, which is a component of proteoglycan, acts as cellular receptor for various viruses. So in this way, viruses and bacteria can enter the body with the help of components of the extracellular matrix. And in cancer, we know cancer cells lack fibronectin, and due to this, the cancer cell detaches from the remaining cells, and it will lead to metastasis. They will detach from the remaining cells in the extracellular matrix, and they will cause the metastasis. So in this way, the extracellular matrix also helping the bacteria and virus to come in to enter the cell, to enter the body, and they are also helping the cancer cell to spread, that is metastasis. And coming to the disease of extracellular matrix, the disease in extracellular matrix may affect the different components of the ECM. That is rheumatoid arthritis, scleroderma, systemic lupus erythematosus, polymyositis, granulomatosis with polyangiitis, Sjogren's syndrome. And apart from this, osteogenesis imperfecta, Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, Alport syndrome, chondrodysplasia, Marfan syndrome, and ankylosing spondylosis. So all these are the diseases or defects, diseases due to defects in the extracellular matrix or components of extracellular matrix. So coming to the individual diseases, the rheumatoid arthritis, we are not going in details about the individual diseases. The rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune disease that can cause joint pain and damage due to chronic inflammation. And systemic lupus erythematosus, SLE, it is autoimmune disease in which the body's immune system mistakenly attacks healthy tissue in many parts of the body. That's why there is systemic effects in SLE. So most of the extracellular matrix diseases are autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases means they will produce the antibodies by themselves, which will destroy the body tissue only. So the autoantibodies will destroy the extracellular matrix components. Unlike the other diseases in which the external agent, whether it is toxic substance or bacteria or virus, the external agent will come and create the disease. Whereas in autoimmune disease, the body itself produces the autoantibodies which will destroy the components of the body. In the same way, in the extracellular matrix, the autoantibodies are produced which will destroy the different components of the extracellular matrix. So other disease, scleroderma, it is chronic inflammation by autoimmunity. It is widespread in vascular damage, and here we can see the progressive interstitial and perivascular fibrosis. That is, it is a vascular damage. The fibrosis is a damage and it occurs in between and around the blood vessels. That is known as interstitial and perivascular fibrosis. And there will be multi-system changes also. That means the blood vessels present in different systems will be affected in scleroderma. And polymyositis, it is inflammatory myopathy. That is attack of muscle tissue by the immune cells. So this is uncommon inflammatory diseases that causes proximal muscle weakness. In polymyositis, the proximal muscles are more commonly affected. That means the autoimmune antibodies will affect the muscle cells, the proximal muscle cells. That is polymyositis. Granulomatosis with polyangiitis. It is an uncommon disorder that causes inflammation of blood vessels in nose, sinuses, throat, lungs, and kidney. Sjogren's syndrome. It is a long-term autoimmune disease that affects the body's moisture-producing glands. That's why the two common symptoms are dry eyes and dry mouth. Okay, the moisture-producing glands which are present in eyes and mouth, the salivary glands are affected. That's why the symptoms in the Sjogren's syndrome are dry eyes and dry mouth. So you can see in the picture. Osteogenesis imperfecta. So this is caused by deficiency of type 1 collagen. So we know the bones are mostly formed by collagen, and then when there is any defect in the collagen, especially type 1 collagen, the bone formation will be defect. The bones are brittle and they are easily prone to fracture. So that's why this is known as osteogenesis imperfecta, is known as brittle bone disease. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So this is a defect in fibrillar collagen. So there will be joint laxity and easy bruising or seam. So here you can see there is a very much laxity in the skin and joints, and there is easy bruising. That means that even for a small injury, there will be bruise on the skin surface. So this is seen in the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. And Alport syndrome, it's a birth defect, and the defect is in type 4 collagen. So here we can see hereditary nephritis, the inflammation by birth itself, and hematuria is the common symptom seen in the Alport syndrome. So all these are, most of the extracellular matrix diseases are hereditary. They come from genes, and most of them are autoimmune diseases. And chondrodysplasia, type 1 collagen defect, and Marfan syndrome, here the extracellular fibrillin defect is there. Here we will see the skeletal abnormalities and cardiovascular lesions in the Marfan syndrome. So that's why the patient with Marfan syndrome will be very thin because of skeletal abnormalities. And there may be septal defects in the patient with Marfan syndrome. Septal means the cardiovascular, the septum in the heart. And the localized form of collagen deposition defects are the Peyronie's disease, Bale's disease, hypertrophic scar, and keloid. So here you can see the pictures of keloid and the hypertrophic scar. This is a keloid and this is hypertrophic scar, which are due to the collagen defect. And disease of elastin, coming to disease of elastin, the elastin is present in different parts of the body where the elasticity of the organ is required. So that's why the diseases of elastin are seen in emphysema, in lungs, atherosclerosis, that is seen in the blood vessels, and Menkes disease, pseudoxanthoma elasticum, and Williams disease. So all these diseases are related to the defect in the elastin, which is a structural protein and which is the component of the extracellular matrix. So these are also diseases of ECM. Coming to diseases of laminin, progeria, the junctional epidermolysis bullosa, the Pearson syndrome, congenital nephrotic syndrome, all these are the diseases which occur due to defect in the laminin and adhesive protein in the extracellular matrix. And coming to scurvy and diabetes mellitus, the relation of extracellular matrix defects with the scurvy and diabetes, there is a relation. In scurvy, we know there is vitamin C deficiency. So when there is vitamin C deficiency, which is required for the synthesis of collagen, the collagen proline and hydroxyproline are formed with the help of vitamin C. So when there is vitamin C deficiency, there is defect in the formation of collagen fibers. So tropocollagen are incapable to aggregate to form collagen fibrils. So that's why in scurvy we can suspect vitamin C deficiency, and we can also suspect the collagen diseases because in vitamin C deficiency there is defective collagen formation. And coming to diabetes mellitus, the diabetes mellitus, there are advanced glycated end products, AGEs are formed. So these advanced glycated end products will involve in the cross linkages of the collagen. During the formation of collagen fibers, these AGEs will be involved in the cross linkages and they will make the collagen weak and they will be easily susceptible for breakdown. So that's why diabetes will also damage the collagen cross linkages, which leads to different collagen diseases. So this is the relation of the diseases with the extracellular matrix. So how will you diagnose the diseases of extracellular matrix? It is difficult to diagnose the diseases of extracellular matrix because the symptoms are very limited. They are very common symptoms. So the common symptoms which we see in the extracellular matrix diseases are fatigue, muscle weakness, fever, body aches, joint pains, and skin rash. So these symptoms are also seen in the other diseases. So that's why it is very difficult to diagnose the diseases of extracellular matrix. So as most of the diseases are hereditary, we will take the family history, and as most of the diseases are autoimmune diseases, we will estimate the autoantibodies for diagnosis of different diseases, extracellular matrix disorders. So these are the different autoantibodies which are produced in different ECM diseases. So depending upon the family history and depending upon the basic investigations and depending upon the signs and symptoms, we will assess the disease, we will come to a provisional diagnosis, and we will send the patient for estimation of autoantibodies, by which we can come to a final diagnosis, conclusion of the diagnosis. So this finishes the first part of the class. We had seen the extracellular matrix. We had seen the components of the extracellular matrix, the proteoglycans, structural proteins, collagen, elastin, and adhesive molecules fibronectin, laminin, and integrin. And we had seen the functions of the extracellular matrix. We had seen the individual function, and we had seen the overall function of the extracellular matrix. The main function being the support to the cells and the intracellular communications, and they will prevent the injuries to the cell, and they will help in the cell migration, cell differentiation during the embryogenesis. And we had seen the different disorders of the extracellular matrix. Most of the disorders of the ECM are associated with the collagen. And apart from that, we had seen the diseases of the elastin, fibronectin, and laminin. So the defect, and most of the defects in the extracellular matrix are hereditary, and most of them are autoimmune diseases. So all these we had seen in the extracellular matrix. The second part of the class is protein targeting. So what is protein targeting? It is also known as protein sorting. So the protein targeting or protein sorting is biological mechanism by which proteins are transported to their appropriate destination in the cell or outside it. That means we know the proteins are formed in the cytoplasm, but all the proteins are not having the function in the cytoplasm. So they have to go to their destination organelle, or outside the cell or within the cell. They have to go to their target destination, then only they can perform their functions. Because all the proteins are formed in the cytoplasm by transcription and translation. So these proteins have to be translocated, or they have to be sorted to their destination organelle. Then only they can perform their function. And these proteins synthesized has to be correctly localized to perform their proper function. So protein targeting is nothing but translocation of protein from cytoplasm to any other organelle or outside the cell to perform their function. That is known as protein targeting. Protein targeting is necessary for the fulfillment of the function of the protein. And we know proteins. What are proteins? All the biochemical substances that are produced are proteins only. All the hormones, enzymes, and important biological transporters, receptors, all hormones, everything are produced in the cytoplasm only. But all these proteins are transported to their target destination for performing their function. So all are produced in the cell are nothing but proteins. So how the proteins are formed, you know, by transcription, by formation of mRNA from DNA in the nucleus. From there, it comes to the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm, by translation, we'll get the protein. Any protein, it can be enzyme, it can be hormone, it can be biological substance, anything is produced in the cytoplasm. And it can't remain in the cytoplasm. To perform the function, it should reach its destination. So all proteins are synthesized in the cytoplasm only, and they have to reach their destination. So in reaching their destination, there are two ways. That is sorting, the sorting or protein targeting, or the translocation of the newly formed protein, anything is same. So this translocation occurs in two ways. One is post-translational and the other one is co-translational. That is, during the formation, there is transcription and translation in the protein formation. And in this protein translocation, there is post-translational and co-translational. So what is this post-translational? Post-translational targeting means the transport of protein occurs after translation, which is fully completed and protein is formed. So in the cytoplasm, after the translation, the protein is completely formed. So after this complete formation of protein, this protein is translocated to its destination. Then that translocation is known as post-translation targeting. In some cases, that is co-translation targeting, the transport of protein occurs during translation only, in which the translation is not fully completed and the protein is not fully formed. So during the process of translation only, the translocation occurs. So that is the difference. So in post-translational targeting, the translocation occurs after the translation, that is after formation of the complete protein. Whereas in co-translation targeting, the translocation occurs during the process of the translation only. Without complete formation of protein only, the translocation occurs. So that is the post-translational and co-translational targeting. The translocation by post-translational targeting occurs in the nucleus, mitochondria, and peroxisomes. That means the translocation of proteins formed in the cytoplasm, its movement to the nucleus, mitochondria, and peroxisomes generally occurs by post-translational targeting. That means after complete formation of proteins in the cytoplasm only, they move to the nucleus, mitochondria, and peroxisomes generally. And the co-translational targeting occurs in endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, and plasma membrane, and secretory proteins. That means outside the cell. So the translocation of the proteins which are formed in the cytoplasm to these organelles will generally occur by the co-translational targeting. That is, during the formation of protein only, they will enter these organelles. That is co-translational targeting. So here you can see the post-translational targeting or post-translational import. Here you can see this is the protein which is formed on the ribosome. So after the complete formation of protein in the cytoplasm, so here this is the protein which is formed on the ribosome in the cytoplasm. So after complete formation of the protein only, this protein is entering the mitochondria. So this is post-translational import, because after complete formation of protein only, this protein is being translocated to the mitochondria from cytoplasm. Okay, here you can see this protein after formation only, it is entering the mitochondria through this membrane. Coming to co-translational import, so here you can see during the process of translation, that means the process of translation is not completed, the protein is being formed slowly. In this process only, the protein is being translocated. Here also you can see during the process of formation of protein only, this protein is being translocated, is transferred to the destination site. So this type of translocation is known as co-translational import. So that you had seen the co-translation and post-translational targeting, or translocating the proteins during the translation and after the translation, in other words. So the examples, the receptors. Receptors are proteins which are formed in the cytoplasm, but the function of receptors is on the plasma membrane. So they are translocated to the plasma membrane. Similarly, DNA polymerase is an enzyme which is synthesized in the cytoplasm, but its function is in nucleus. That's why it is transported, it is translocated to the nucleus. Similarly, cytochrome C reductase formed in cytoplasm and it is translocated to mitochondria for its function of electron transport chain and all those things. And catalase, since is an enzyme in cytoplasm, which is translocated to peroxisomes for its function. And insulin, it is a hormone, is synthesized in the cytoplasm and it is sent outside the cell by translocation. Because its function is outside the cell, it has to act on the other cells. So the insulin is released outside the cell by translocation. So all these, some occur by the post-translational targeting and some occur by the co-translational targeting. Depends. So here you can see the different proteins are synthesized in the cytoplasm, and from cytoplasm they are translocated into the mitochondria or lysosomes or nucleus or endoplasmic reticulum or Golgi apparatus. In this way, the proteins formed in the cytoplasm are translocated to the different organelles. And this can happen by co-translational targeting or post-translational targeting. And in case of insulin, it is different because All these occur within the cell, whereas insulin, they are translocated outside the cell by the vesicles. And how these proteins are translocated? So we know some are translocated by post-translationally and some are by co-translationally. But how these are translocated? How these proteins are translocated? What are telling them to go to that organ or organelle? So they are formed in cytoplasm. Some are going to nucleus, some are going to mitochondria, and some are going outside. Who is guiding them? You go to mitochondria, you go to nucleus, and you go out of the cell. Who are guiding? How these proteins are being translocated? Targeting signals. So these are being guided by targeting signals. So these targeting signals will guide the different proteins formed in the cytoplasm to go to different target destinations. So where are we getting these target signals from? So these target signals are nothing but they are piece of information which are enabling the cellular transport mechanism. So these target signals are nothing but they are information, they are piece of information which are helping in cellular transport mechanism. Okay, that means translocation of the proteins. This transport mechanism is nothing but translocation of proteins. So these targeting signals are guiding or they are correctly positioning the protein. You go to mitochondria, you go to nucleus, you go outside the cell. So these all are being guided by the targeting signals. Then where these targeting signals are present? So these targeting signals are present within the formed protein. So the proteins are formed by polypeptide chains, and a part of that protein, a part of that polypeptide chain forms the targeting signal. So this information is contained in the protein itself. In the protein, there is polypeptide chain, and a small portion of that polypeptide chain forms the targeting signals. So the targeting signal or the piece of information which is enabling the transport mechanism is present within that protein only in the form of peptide. We know peptides, peptide is nothing but a small part of polypeptide chain. So a peptide, here the peptides which is present in the polypeptide chain is forming the targeting signal. So that's why the formed protein is going to different organelles by taking the signals from the targeting signals which are present in the protein itself. And without targeting signals, we know the protein will always remain in the cytoplasm only without going to the target organ, and the function of the protein will be affected if it remains within the cytoplasm. So remember, the targeting is nothing but translocation of protein. This translocation of protein is done by co-translationally or post-translationally, and this is guided by the targeting signals. The targeting signals are present in a small peptide which is present in the polypeptide chain in the protein itself. And targeting peptides or signal peptides are two types: the pre-sequential peptides and internal targeting peptides. The pre-sequential peptides are present in N-terminal and C-terminal, and the internal targeting peptides are present within the polypeptide chain. So there is no much confusion. The signaling peptides or targeting peptides is same, a small polypeptide chain which contains of limited amino acids is known as peptide. This peptide is present in the protein itself, in the polypeptide chain of the protein. But there are two types depending upon their location, that's all. So if the peptide is present here in the, this polypeptide chain which is having N-terminal and C-terminal, if the signaling peptide is present in the N-terminal or C-terminal, then it is known as pre-sequential peptide. If the peptide, the signaling peptide is present in between, somewhere in between the polypeptide chain, suppose these 3 amino acids or these 4 amino acids or the signaling peptide, or these 4 amino acids or the signaling peptide, then it is known as internal targeting peptides. So that is a small difference. But in both cases, this targeting peptide or signaling peptide will guide the protein for its translocation. into the different organelle. And coming to the types of transport, we had seen the type of translocation, post-translation, and we had seen the targeting signals, the types of targeting peptides, and now we are seeing the type of transport, how they are transported, by which mechanism. We had seen which peptides, which signals are guiding them. Now we are seeing how they are transported. What is the mechanism of transport of these proteins? So there are three types of transport of proteins in the cell: gated transport, transmembrane transport, and vesicular transport. So what is this gated transport? So these are the three types of transport by which the different proteins are being translocated to different organelles in the cell. So coming to the gated transport, the protein transfer to nucleus occurs by this gated transport generally. So nuclear pore complexes, here it is important, the nuclear pore complexes function as selective gates that actively transport specific molecules. Okay, actively transport means there is necessity of energy that actively transport to specific molecules. Okay, so these gated transport occurs in nucleus. That means the proteins that are to be transported from cytoplasm to the nucleus will generally occur by the gated transport, and this gated transport is regulated by the nuclear pore complexes. Okay, so here in this picture you can see the nuclear pore complexes. This is the nuclear pore, this is the nucleus, and this is the cytoplasm, and in between there will be nuclear pores. So here you can see this is the nuclear pore, and nuclear pore will be having a nuclear pore complexes. So these complexes will selectively send the required proteins into the nucleus. This is known as gated transport. Okay, gated transport occurs for the translocation of proteins from cytoplasm to the nucleus. So this is regulated by nuclear pore complexes. This is about the gated transport. Coming to the second one, the transmembrane transport. The protein transfer occurs by membrane-bound protein translocators. So this generally occurs, the translocation of proteins from cytosol to endoplasmic reticulum and cytosol to mitochondria. So the protein molecule is unfolded to the snake shape. That means the initially highly coiled protein will become straight for entering into the membrane. So this is known as transmembrane transport. Here the transmembrane transport is regulated by the protein translocators which are present on the membrane. So unlike the gated transport, in which the nuclear membrane, the nuclear pore complexes will regulate, and in transmembrane transport, the protein translocators will regulate the transport of protein from cytoplasm into ER or the mitochondria. So here you can see in this picture, this is the cytoplasm, the outer part, and this is the mitochondria. Here you can see the outer membrane and inner membrane of the mitochondria, and here it is the protein translocators. On the membranes, the protein translocators are present. So these will guide, these will selectively send only the required proteins inside the organelle. So here you can see the protein translocator which is present on the outer membrane, and here also you can see, and this is the protein translocator which is present on the inner membrane, inner mitochondrial membrane. So these will selectively send the newly synthesized protein into the organelle which is having specific function in this organelle. Okay, so this is known as transmembrane transport, which occurs mostly in mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum. And the third one is vesicular transport. The protein transfer occurs by transport vesicle from one compartment to the other compartment inside the cell. So this generally occurs from ER to Golgi apparatus and cytoplasm to ER. So this translocation of protein from one compartment to another compartment inside the cell occurs by the vesicle transport. and also outside the cell. From cytoplasm to the outside the cell also can also occur by the transport vesicle. Okay. So here you can see the proteins are present in the vesicle and these are released outside the cell or outside the another organelle, into the another organelle or outside the cell. This is known as vesicular transport. Okay. So we had seen about the protein targeting. Protein targeting is nothing but the newly formed protein is translocated to different organelles from cytoplasm. The newly formed protein, which is formed by transcription and translation, is formed in the cytoplasm. Whether it can be enzyme, hormone, receptor, or any other biochemical substance, the newly formed protein is formed in the cytoplasm. So this is translocated to different organelles for the purpose of their for fulfilling their function. For the purpose of fulfilling their function. This is known as protein targeting. And protein targeting can occur at different timings. In that we have divided it into post-translation targeting and co-translation targeting. And we had seen the signals, how these signals, the targeting signals are present within the cell, within the protein. So they are formed in the form of peptides in the polypeptide chain, and these peptides can be pre-sequential or internal peptides, internal targeting peptides, depending upon the location of the peptide. Pre-sequential means at the endings, at C-terminal or N-terminal, most commonly at N-terminal. And internal targeting peptide means they are present somewhere in between the polypeptide chain. But anyhow, wherever it is present, their function is to guide the to give the signals, targeting signals to the protein and to guide them for its translocation to its target destination. And coming to the disorders of protein targeting, the genetic alteration that affect protein targeting signals is associated with several metabolic disorders. So translocation, the mislocation can occur by alteration of protein trafficking machinery or mislocation by altered protein targeting signals or mislocation by changes in the protein interactions. So when the mislocation occurs, the protein cannot reach the newly formed protein or enzyme or hormone cannot reach its target destination and it may reach wrongly to some other organelle. So that leads to different disorders. The most common disorder is primary hyperoxaluria. So here the enzyme alanine glyoxylate alanine transferase, the alanine glyoxylate transferase is present in the peroxisomes generally. But in protein targeting defects, what happens is this enzyme goes to mitochondria instead of peroxisomes. So there is no enzyme in the peroxisomes. So this leads to increased production of oxalate, which results in increased oxalate in the body. These accumulates and finally leads to nephrolithiasis. So other protein targeting disorders are pyruvate dehydrogenase deficiency and susceptibility to severe alcoholic liver disease, dilated cardiomyopathy with ataxia, and human deafness dystonia syndrome. So all these syndromes are seen in defect in the protein targeting. We know why there is defect in the protein targeting due to mislocation. The proteins newly formed fail to reach their destination organelle. So the protein targeting is defective. So in this case, different diseases occurs. And the defect may be due to defect in the signaling. We know peptides are necessary for guiding them. If there is defect in the peptides, if signaling, the targeting peptides or signaling peptides, this may lead to the disorders. So these are some recent advances. So we had finished the protein targeting and disorders. So these are the recent advances in the components of extracellular matrix. And these are my references for the today's class. And these are some helpful websites for you for today's class. Hope everyone is clear. Thank you. So, okay, thank you and all the best everyone.